So picking up where we just left off, at this point you should have created a new project folder, taken a look at some of the specs for your Dragster blank, and also have drawn your Dragster blank. So here's my Dragster blank, and at this point you'll be ready to start designing out your car. So what I would recommend doing, you can either start from the top or the side. It doesn't really matter. You'll have to mess with your work planes a little bit more if you design out the side first and then move to the top, but I'll show you how to do that. And what I would recommend doing is if you're wanting organic shapes, so curves, you can use the spline tool. And using the spline tool will allow you to have a little bit more control over more organic, smooth shapes. Now notice here there's this blue line coming through. That is my power plant hole. I want to make sure that I give myself enough space there so I don't cut into the power plant hole. So it's really important that that is avoided. Every time you click, you're going to be given these little handles for you to adjust the pitch of the curve. So you can come back and fine tune this later, depending upon how many times you decided to make your, decided to click. And then you need to define the area of your vehicle. So I'm going to come back with the line tool and finish out the profile so that whenever I go and extrude it, I have the entirety of the profile to extrude from. Now, I would recommend using the intersect because what that does is it keeps everything that you just drew and removes everything else. So you can see how that works right there. So I'm going to say, okay. Now I have the side profile of my car. I'm not going to lie, this is not super attractive. And then I want to maybe do something for this top. So I can click on Start 2D Sketch. You'll notice that it's not selecting the top view, which is okay. That means you'll have to use your work planes instead. So I'm going to come and grab, in this case, my XY work plane works pretty well. And you can use line tool. It just kind of is up to you on how you want to design this out. This is totally up to you. This is your project. You just need to make sure that you do not cut into your power plant hole and that your final design is to specification. Because remember, if your car is not to spec, then it is not going to be qualified to race. You can still race it, but you will not be able to race for prizes. Okay, so if you want to actually race against the class, you need to make sure that your car is to spec. All right, so I closed out that profile. What I'm going to do is draw a line right down the middle of this, and I'm going to use this line to reflect, if I could draw a straight line. Let's see, where's the center? I'm going to reflect what I just drew down the middle of this because I want it to be mirrored on both sides. So I'm going to select this bottom part. That looks good. And I want to mirror it across this line. So this mirror line here, and say apply. So now it's mirrored it across both sides because I want my dragster to be symmetrical on both sides. So I'm going to finish my sketch, and then I can go back to extrude, and I can cut out these new pieces. So I don't want that anymore. So that gives me a different profile for the dragster. And I want that to go all the way through and say, okay. So now I've made it a little bit more skinny. And at this point, go in and make the holes for the axles. So let me see. I don't exactly remember what the hole diameter needs to be. Oh, it's updating it over here. So it looks like the axle is 0.13 inches. So we're probably going to have to cut it a little bit bigger than that. So 0.16. Give it a little bit more space. So I'm going to start my 2D sketch on this side using my work planes again. And grab my circle tool, 0.16, keeping in mind that my specifications, so I need to be at least 0.2 inches up from the bottom of the dragster, so I can project geometry to get these edges in there. So this is not 0.2 at least, so it needs to be at least 0.2 up from the bottom, and it needs to be, I don't remember from the back, but I think I could do like 1.5 would be safe. I have to check the spec sheet to make sure. So from the back, bottom axle hole to the bottom needs to be between 0.2 and zero point 0.4. Rear axle hole from the rear of the car needs to be between 0.35 to 4 inches. So I need to check that to make sure I'm still within spec, which I am. That's good. 1.5 will fall within that spec. Same thing for the front. Have to decide where the front of your axle is going to be located. Because I made it so skinny here, that might prove to be a little bit challenging. I may have to move it a little bit because you still need to keep it at least 0.2 inches, and it's awfully close to the top of that as well. So it does risk breaking in half, because what happens is this front nose will slam into a foam noodle, and if it's too weak right here, so there's going to be a hole here, what will happen is it will break your car right in half. So you want to make sure that you give yourself, enough material to work with so that it doesn't break your car in half, because that does happen. I've had students break their cars in half because they didn't give themselves enough material to work with to prevent that from happening. So I moved it backwards a little bit. So I made mine 5.5 inches so I can make sure that I'm still within spec. So I finished my sketch, and then I'm going to extrude out those holes, to rotate back around. So extrude this, and I want to cut it through all. Say, okay, so now I have my axle holes as well. I can check, make sure I don't have any holes in my power plant hole, nothing that's going to cause it to break. Now, we will want to use a scale, and we will weigh your cars to make sure that it falls within at least 30 grams or more. So you don't want to cut away too much material where you end up less than 30 grams. And obviously this needs to be at least 7 inches long. So I can check that to make sure that it is at least 7 inches, either using my dimensioning tool, or whenever I place it on a sheet. So I come back and look here. See, it says it's 9.4. That's an old dimension though. Delete that out. Let's see where we're at now. It needs to be at least more than 7. So I'm 8.8 right there. So that's within spec. That works. So you'll have to use your dimensions to make sure you are within spec so that your vehicle isn't too skinny and it doesn't break.